may have noticed a problem starting to form in our logic. While functionally this works exactly as we want it to, the logic itself is not optimized. The logic in its current state is going to give us two problems. First of all, if we want to add something after the text is set, or modify something in the existing logic, we're going to have to do this twice, because we have duplicated logic. Secondly, in terms of performance, we want to make every attempt possible to minimize the amount of logic in our project. Generally speaking, we should always avoid repetition. Because these are the duplicated pieces of the logic, we should merge these into a single branch. So let's select these nodes here and delete them. And then remove the connections between the add node and the speed setter, which we can do by Alt and left clicking on a socket to clear all of its connections. Now let's move this into the center and add a new node, which is called Select Data. By default, this node will expect inputs of the integer or int data type. But let's change this by setting its data type attribute to float. What this node does is takes multiple pulse and data connections and outputs the data which corresponds to whichever pulse socket was fired. For example, if I connect the add node's pulse and data connections to the top two sockets of the select data node, and the subtract node's pulse and data connections to the bottom two sockets, what this will do is output either the increased speed value or decreased speed value, depending on which key was pressed. So let's connect this node to the speed setter and then press play. Now you can see that we have exactly the same result, except we have much less logic. Another thing to be mindful of is that nodes relating to different aspects of the logic should be kept separate from one another. In our logic, for example, we have one block here which deals with changing the value of our variable based on a key press, and another block here which updates the text in our scene to reflect the variable's value. At the moment, our project is small enough that we probably don't need to disconnect these, but in the next lessons, we are going to be adding more functionality to modify our scene assets based on this variable. If we continue going along in a line, things are going to get pretty hard to manage. Also, if something doesn't work along this chain of nodes, it's very possible that all subsequent logic will also break. That is why it is good to separate or decouple logic so that the functionality of one aspect of the logic isn't dependent on separate unrelated functionality. So let's decouple this now so that we separate the getting and setting of our speed variable from the updating of the speed text. Now you're probably wondering how this logic will ever be fired, as this is no longer connected to an event. Well, if we drag the speed variable onto our graph, we see that one of the options it gives us is on change. If we select this, we have a new event listener which is fired every time the value of the variable changes. So if we connect this up, we have now successfully optimized and decoupled our logic. If we now press play, nothing has changed as far as the outside world is concerned, but the underlying logic is more performant and can be easily built upon. So now that we've optimized and separated our functionality, we are in a very good place to update the rotation of our needle graphic, which is what we will be doing in the next video.